So I've listened to the entire Finger 11 discography probably 10 times between these two interviews. And,
Wow.
my whole life I had listened to the albums, but,
Mhm.
you know, listening with studio headphones with a purpose. One
Yeah.
thing that jumps out to me is Sean's bass playing. So across the entire discography, there are so many tasty, memorable bass lines,
Yeah.
stuff that I feel might get lost if you're not wearing good headphones and really paying attention.
Right.
Uh, I wanted to ask if I feel like his bass playing is like tragically underrated. So I was wondering if you
Yeah.
feel the same and if you have any comments about what it was like being the rhythm section with him holding down the fort for Finger 11.
Sure. Definitely the best bass player I've ever played with, and I haven't played with many, but one of the bass players of any band I've toured with. So underrated, and and his personality is he's a quiet soul. He's a gentle soul, but he cares about the bass so much, and he spent more time with headphones on the bus, always practicing. If we had hotel rooms, he would always take his bass, and he loved playing bass. Um, and when we were recording stuff, he was always probably the most open to just wanting to create whatever the coolest part was. So like like the drums and the guitar, we kind of went into the studio often with kind of knew what was going to happen. There was always bass lines on the demo, but when we were recording the record, Sean and, not so much me, James and Rick and the producer, Johnny, sat in a circle, and each bar or each, a verse of the song, they really listened, and like, they were all sitting around going, try this, Sean, try this, Sean, try that. And it was a really open, beautiful thing. It wasn't them telling Sean to try things. He was also contributing, but the band just spent a bunch of time like trying as many different things as they could with the bass on every record, and because of that, they're, I think, the most interesting instrument on all of the records. Maybe not so much Greyest the Blue Skies, but all the rest is the bass. Like you said, I find you never know what's around the corner with the bass parts on all those songs. And there's not a lot of things repeated in a really tasteful way. And that's because, like I said, they sat and really spent time trying to make signature parts that I guess weren't that common with the usual rhythm parts. A lot of rock bands were chugging along eighth notes when Sean was doing really melodic stuff.
There's some like
on the
jazzy
bass.
bluesy stuff
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking, I think Drag You Down, there's the don't. There's like
Yes.
this walking of the bass in this super
Yeah.
heavy song.
Yeah, absolutely. And me and him as a rhythm section, I always grew up. I was mentioning Queensryche earlier. When I first discovered rhythm section, to me that meant the bass guitar and the bass drum locking in, doing the same patterns. That's not always the case, but that was always something I really liked and wanted to have. And me and Sean definitely got to the place where when we were writing a song, we were just communicating through our instruments, and we locked in on a lot of stuff. I think to make the song better, but kind of cooler too. And, if you listen to a lot of the bass drum parts and the bass guitar, they're playing a lot of cool syncopated stuff together. And that's by Sean listening to the drums and really connecting with it. He's a monster bass player. And honestly, the personality that he has is, his quiet nature and stuff, for some reason, I think helped his instruments. Like his whole personality, when in a conversation with people who don't know, sometimes, for lack of a better word, awkward, but like I say that in the most loving way, but, just more of a quiet guy, but all of his personality came out in his bass playing. That's where he spoke. And, damn, I miss that guy. I love that guy.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe his best form of communication was through his bass playing. Like that's where he was free.
Yeah.
There's so many parts in Finger 11 songs, or there's so many songs where it's basically just drums and bass, and then there's kind of little guitars or little atmospheric things, but it's the drums and bass that are locked in, setting
Yeah.
kind of what the song is. So a lot in verses like that. So it's that with, you know, Scott's vocals that come in, and his vocals have a ton of room because the guitars aren't really in yet. Anyways, I'm just throwing out stuff.
I got to say, man, that I haven't thought about this till right now. I have not thought this in depth about the guys in the band, in Finger 11, or our parts of these songs, really in years. So it's like emotional right now in the most beautiful ways to like be thinking about those guys, and like, so, you know, I miss those guys. You know, I love them so much. They're my brothers. We were a band for 20 years, and yeah, it's very emotional talking about this stuff, man. You know, because when you're not in a band anymore, just, you know, often you just don't talk anymore, you know, and we kind of ended. I know you want to talk about that stuff later, but yeah, it's nice to be talking about those guys. You know, it just reminds me how much I love them. Yeah,
when something beautiful or meaningful, like a successful band and years in a relationship, when those things end, it's always difficult, and there can be tension, there can be hard feelings, and sometimes it takes a lot of years to mature, to have more life experiences, to become a better person. And then you can look back where you don't have so much emotional attachment to it, and you can see it from, you know, from a different view, and realize that, you know, maybe things happen for a reason, maybe it's for the best, or maybe not, but you can kind of look back and hold on to the best parts of what that was.
Absolutely. That's what I'm perfectly said. That's what I'm conveying to you. I'm having so many beautiful memories right now of it all.
So with Finger 11, man, you guys toured so much. You guys were road warriors. You played with all these all-time great bands. Who was the band that you were the biggest fan of before sharing the stage with them?
Well, I mean, Ozzy, I suppose. Although I love Ozzy, but he wasn't like I grew up having all of Ozzy's records. He was probably the most famous character that we played with, you know, the most recognizable face. Gosh, who else? You know, we would do
Crue or Evanescence.
That was Molly Cruz with Saint Asonia.
Okay.
Evanescence, you know, we spent a lot of time touring with them all around the world, but when they were starting, they were just another band on Wind Up that, you know, had their first big hit. So it wasn't that sort of relationship where we were fans from afar for a long time. And Amy is like a little sister to me. I love that girl. She is just world-class person. And, you know, we became great friends in all of our travels, and which I did with a lot of people, but Amy in particular is the sweetest girl and such a ferocious singer. But yeah, probably to answer your question, Ozzy, I suppose, was the most, you know, iconic person to be on the road with.
On tour, is there such thing as a drum riser that's too high? Does that exist?
Oh man,
your shrine up on the throne.
It's funny because there was a few things, you know, probably more than a few things that, you know, a few of the guys in Finger 11 and me disagreed on. I guess I was more of an 80s guy, that I always loved the big drum riser. I always had a dream of having a drum riser with like round stairs going up to it. There's a drum riser in the video for Higher by Creed that was always like, that's the one. It's red and it's stairs going up to, like, you know. So I always envisioned myself having that, but we never had that. We had a normal little rinky-dink riser, and I think eventually we got a front part to make it look round. I know those guys are still using to this day when I see videos of them. But, you know, recently I watched Megadeth, and their fucking drum riser is ridiculously high, almost to a comical level of height. That's probably too much, but I like a drummer being on a riser, and if the riser looks cool and is part of the stage set, to me, that's cool. But I've always been a fan of production on stage, you know, big light shows. I know back in the day, me and Rick would disagree on, you know, he liked park hands, like 80s park hand lights, and he would have loved to have our show just to be that, you know, a bunch of park hands on. And I was the opposite, you know, those moving lights and all those stuff. I was always a fan of those, of that look on the stage. So we disagreed on that. But yeah, I'm an 80s guy. The bigger the production, including the drum riser, for me, the better. But when I started playing with Saint Asonia, we had Stain's gear. So Stain had this huge drum riser. So the first show I played with them at Rock on the Range, you know, it was a bigger drum riser than I'd ever had. I was like, yes, finally.
So I was at the Megadeth concert on Tuesday in Montreal. You
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
that's
were
right.
texting from there.
Yeah.
And before Megadeth went on, you're like, make sure to check out the drum riser. Like, be aware of how high that drum riser is. And
Yeah.
I was texting you about how insane the mosh pits were for Trivium and for Lamb of God, and you were saying that you know the guys in Lamb of God, and I'm texting you. They're on stage. They get off stage. They start texting you. So it was this whole kind of
Randy,
circle
yeah.
of texting on that night, which was cool. And man, I got an incredible video of the Trivium mosh pit, and it was so good and so wild that their singer reached out to me. He slid into my DMs and said, dude, you got to send me this video. And then
Amazing.
Trivium, the singer, posted the video. One of the other band members posted it. So I have like from that concert, I have like a viral video of their mosh pit. It was bananas. Like, it was dangerous. Like, I was watching it from a safe distance, but man,
you sent me that video as it was happening. Yeah, that was cool.
Man, those guys are crazy. What would you say are actually, before I ask that question, when you think of drum risers, is the kind of all-time great drum riser Tommy Lee of Motley Crue, in like the one that goes out and can spin all the way upside down?
Oh man, well, it's tough with him because it just kept evolving. You know, when you look back at that Girls video where they showcase that, it actually looks really kind of clunky and very 80s now. You know, as time went on, obviously leading up to the roller coaster, that I was on tour with Motley for that. I got to experience that close up every night. But you know, it's such a difference. It's just I guess what's the word? Like the technology from that 80s drum riser from the Girls tour till now. So that's probably the most iconic. But I don't know, the Crucifly, as they call it, is probably now. I mean, I'm not sure how you top that. Those guys are doing this summer tour or stadium tour coming up. And I got to think that they're going to top that roller coaster with something. But what? I can't wait to find out.
It's never enough. What's the best concert you've ever seen? So it doesn't have to be someone that you played with, but just the best concert you've ever seen.
I think as far as being part of something, like in this moment with something, Coldplay at the Air Canada Center, there's something about maybe where I was sitting, how they used the building. You know, the lights in an arena that has promotion stuff going around the arena, they used that as part of their light show, which I'd never seen a band do. And they had lights not just on the stage, but at different areas of the crowd throughout the arena. So I was seeing something that I'd not seen before, and just the nature of Coldplay and their songs and the way the singer, Chris Martin, is that his name?
Yep.
The way that he brings the crowd into their show. For some reason that night I saw them, I was immersed. I felt like I was part of the show. So that one really sticks out to me as one of the best, you know, for sure.
Coldplay is probably the only one of my favorite bands that I've yet to see live. So I think you just planted the seed that like the next time they're in Ottawa, Montreal, or Toronto, I gotta go. Another great live band sent in a quote here. So this is, man, these are all drummers. The drum world has shown up on your behalf. This is from Jeff Burrows, the drummer for the Tea Party. So he has to say the following things about Rich. He says, Rich is the kind of drummer that uses an unconventional approach to the method of his creations. He'll take a standard song and flip it so that it makes things not only more interesting for himself, but takes the audience on a different journey than a standard 4-on-the-floor drummer. Always an outstanding performer. Jeff Burrows, the Tea Party.
Wow. You know what? Amazing. Jeff is, and I've told him this many times, one of my all-time favorite drummers. When I was younger, I saw the Tea Party so many times, and the drum part on Save Me is still one of my favorite, drum songs of all time. And Jeff is one of my favorite drummers of all time. And growing up and watching them, and then eventually playing with them, and then after that, eventually getting to know them, especially Jeff. I consider him a dear friend now. He's also probably I'm the biggest fanboy, but also a friend with, So I bow to Jeff Burrows. I think he's a monster and such a great guy. And that's beautiful to hear that, man. I can't believe
when I ask mutual friends that know Jeff Burrows, they all say that he is like a monster drummer, like more so than we know. Like if you've never seen him live, that you wouldn't understand just how great he is on the drums.
He is so awesome. And I remember back in the day, it's like some shows I would see and he'd wear a bandana. And when I'd go watch him and he was wearing that bandana, it was like, oh shit, Jeff's going for it tonight. I mean, I felt so involved in his playing that I even noticed if he was wearing a bandana or not that night, But yeah, Save Me to this day is a song that I cannot play properly. And he wrote that, that will live on for all time. The Save Me drum part. It's just like, I bow to Jeff, love him.
Yeah. And it's one thing to be able to play something, but then it's also something else being the creator of that thing that's hard to play, right?
Absolutely.
So